The very first video I posted to this channel was me analysing the lessons and morals of my childhood Batman show, Brave and the Bold. And as far as first YouTube videos go, you guys seem to like it. So today I've decided to do the same thing, but for the new Bat on the block, and see if kids today are getting the same treatment. Bat Fam is a show all about that. Family. Its target audience definitely skews below me, but that doesn't mean it can't be just as enriching as Brave and the Bold was. There's a couple things I need to dive into before we get started, and that's change. It's very common for people to dislike a new Batman show simply because it's not the one they grew up with. As a childhood fan of Brave and the Bold, which is one of the later ones comparatively, I've certainly dealt with my fair share of this, so I'm going to try and go into this as level-headed as possible and judge it entirely on its own merits. The second thing to address is the change in landscape for kids TV as a whole. Bat Fam isn't playing reruns on Cartoon Network like Brave and the Bold did, or CITV in my case. It's streaming online, on demand. This means it's far more likely than it was back in the day that kids are going to be watching these episodes in order. This gives a lot more opportunity for a serialized story as opposed to the mostly episodic nature that Brave and the Bold had to rely on. It does, however, mean that less episodes are being ordered per season because it doesn't need the rerun capabilities. Bat Fam's first season has 10 episodes, compared to Brave and the Bold's first season having 26. But with that out of the way, let's get started. Episode 1 is Family Game Night and serves mostly to introduce you to the new roster of characters. This is a good starting point. It's episodic, it doesn't assume you've already seen the movie, there's a villain of the episode and some clashing between the family members. I already reviewed the movie in my Christmas episode, but I will also assume that you haven't seen that and give you a quick rundown. Bruce is Batman. No. Really? And he's a bit of a hard nut to crack. He's an overprotective parent to Damian and struggles to show his family how much he cares for them. Damian is actually also Batman. I want you to take everything you know about Damian Wayne and just... He shares nothing in common with his comic counterpart other than his name and family connection to Bruce. This version was never raised with the assassins. He's been with Bruce the entire time and he's currently only 8 years old. We see the story of him becoming Batman, or Little Batman as he's sometimes referred to, in the movie, but all you really need to know is that he's fighting crime alongside Bruce, and Bruce only really trusts him with the easy stuff, which, I mean, fair? He's 8 years old. You know Alfred, he's pretty spot on with what you'd expect. Kind-hearted, sarcastic, violently British. Alicia is Alfred's niece. Alfred doesn't traditionally have a niece. On occasion, some adaptations make Barbara his niece to avoid the whole being Gordon's daughter thing and having an easier way into the Bat family. This version seems pretty original as far as I can tell, so it's just a blank slate for a new character. Cool. Ra's al Ghul. I'm gonna call him Ra's. The show calls him Ra's, and I know a lot of people say Ra's because of Batman Begins, but I grew up calling him Ra's, so I'm not gonna change that now. He is still Damian's grandfather, but is now a ghost that lives in Wayne Manor for some reason. Claire is the more important new character, kind of. Volcana is not a new character by any means, but as far as I'm aware, the concept of aging her down to a preteen and having her live with Bruce is pretty new. Her story isn't really explained right off the bat, but that's fine. We'll get into that later. Episode 2 is very clearly defined into A and B plots that don't really join up at the end. This is a good structure to have when you have a lot of new characters to get the audience used to, and I think it's a good idea to do this early on in the series. The A plot is about Damian trying to escape Bruce's clinginess and going on a field trip to Star Labs with his friends from school, Rudy and Trudy Dent. The concept of having all these reformed villains leading to new characters with their kids being characters for Damian to bounce off of is really neat in my opinion, and I hope we see more of it. Spoiler alert. We don't. Bruce manages to show up as a chaperone for the trip anyway, and Damian has to escape his controlling clutches to find the secret weapons lab. Whilst in there, the three manage to accidentally start a parademon uprising from Apocalypse, as you do, and Bruce has to help them stop it. During the fight, Bruce learns that Damian can handle himself, and that he shouldn't be so overbearing, and Damian learns not to be so reckless. I'm not being funny, but this is literally the plot of the movie. I get not wanting to make it so people have to have seen the movie, but repeating the underlying plot on episode 2 is a bit lazy, and I feel like they could have done a bit better. The B plot is about Alicia trying too hard to get people to like her, and she learns to chill out a bit, which is nice. We've all seen that one annoying toddler at the preschool. Showing them to calm down, not a bad idea. In episode 3, Damian goes off on his own to do something reckless. Bruce has to bail him out, and during the fight together, Bruce learns not to be so overbearing, and Damian learns not to be so reckless. Hang on a second. I hope you like seeing these characters learn these specific lessons over and over again, and if not, buckle up. The redeeming part of this episode is the B-plot. Alfred is being too much of a people pleaser to his own detriment, and it ends with him learning to say no every once in a while. We also get introduced to another new character, Bright, a mysterious masked figure with unclear intentions. Bright is this generation's Red X, and I'm here for it. I think if they do this well, it could genuinely be really cool. The show's starting to lean into a more serialized nature now, which is good because they only have so many episodes to play with, and doing too many episodic ones is going to make the serialized ones suffer. Episode 4 actually splits Bruce and Damien up, which is probably for the best. It's Take Your Kid to Work Day. Bruce takes Claire and Alicia takes Damien. Bruce and Claire get the more interesting side, where they find Clayface undercover in Wayne Enterprises searching for something. The same thing Mad Hatter was searching for in episode 2. This starts to set up a MacGuffin, which is a great way to do a serialized story, and I like the mystery aspect of it. A lot of shows at this point will cut to the villain's perspective and tell the audience what they're looking for, creating a dramatic irony with the protagonist, but here it stays a mystery, and that's pretty fun. Damien goes with Alicia to her villain reformation therapy group and takes after his dad's lack of trust, trying to arrest everyone as his citizen persona. It starts to develop this lack of trust storyline with Alicia that thankfully does come back to resolve. There's a lot of hints in this episode that Alicia is Bright, which deepens the whole lack of trust thing because now it's on both sides. This does mean that the Red X type situation isn't going to be quite as slow burning as I hoped for, but I suppose that makes sense with the shorter season length. In episode 5, Alicia is indeed immediately revealed as being Bright. This episode is all about Bruce and Alicia learning to trust their loved ones and telling each other about their secret identities. This is a great moral to teach kids, right up until the end, where Bruce and Alicia forget everything they've just learnt and decide to keep Damien and Claire in the dark about the anti-glow, which is the MacGuffin that the villains have been searching for. It's a mysterious weapon created by the former Dr. Light that could destroy Gotham by plunging it back into the Dark Ages. The B-plot is Commissioner Gordon and Alfred enjoying classic French cinema, which is honestly just funny. Sue me. We're at the halfway point, and honestly, I'm not being blown away. I understand the need for the first half of the season to be used to set things up that can pay off in the latter, but we still know nothing about Claire. None of the learned morals have had any satisfying payoffs, and the only interesting mysteries so far have already been solved. All that's left to do now is find the anti-glow and destroy it. When I made my Brave and the Bold video, my main 2 cases for fantastic episodes were from season 2, so maybe I'm being a little harsh. It was at this point that I googled what episodes of Brave and the Bold actually make up the first season, and there's still so many incredible episodes with a mix of episodic and serialized stories and better morals for children. Even if you take into account the length of the season and you just take the first 5 episodes of Brave and the Bold, that's completely ignoring the fact that you would have to restructure the season if you only got to keep 10 episodes and just keep the first 5. You still have 5 incredible episodes that I could make an entire video about just by themselves. The only episode here that I couldn't make a huge deal about is the Christmas special that just happens to have made it into the first 5. Comparing the two, it's not even close, and that's me trying to remove as much bias as I possibly can. My hope is that Batfam can take all of this setup from the first half of the season, mix it with the serialized nature of a streaming show, and just knock it out of the park for this last half. Episode 6 is good. Oh, thank the new gods. One of my favourite things about Brave and the Bold's moral structure is that it will teach a lesson in an episode and then later revisit the topic and highlight some more of the nuances. That's exactly what happens here. Episode 6 takes the lessons about trust it just peddled and shows off what happens when you place that trust in the wrong people. And it does that using Claire's backstory and explains to the audience how she got here. This is great. Claire is struggling to fit in as a preteen and is trying to express herself through her art, which Bruce is struggling to connect with. She runs into a supposedly reformed Killer Frost who tells her she wants to display her art in a new gallery she's opening. Claire goes along with it but finds out she's actually trying to rob the place and needs Claire's powers to get into the vault. This is where we learn that Volcano and Killer Frost were partners in crime and that it's Frost's betrayal that actually led to Claire reverting in age and losing her memory in the first place. This helps strengthen the connection between Claire and the rest of the family and serves as a fantastic episode in both an episodic and a serialized sense. Best one so far. Episode 7 is about Damien and Man-Bat. Oh, did I not mention Man-Bat in the beginning? Well, that's because this is the first and only time he's relevant at all. Damien goes off with Man-Bat to do something reckless. Bruce has to bail them out, and during the fight, Bruce learns not to be so overbearing, and Damien learns not to be so reckless. This show's biggest hurdle is its short season. It's very difficult to tell a compelling story with both serialized and episodic aspects in such a short amount of time. I applaud any creative team who gives it a go. But using those episodes to retread the same plotline over and over is sad to see. It works fine as a generic kid show, they do stuff like that all the time, but save that mentality for things like Batwheels. You're never going to make me watch Batwheels. Batman is such an iconic character, and with the power of being so recognizable and knowing you're going to have an audience just from the namesake, I expect better. This episode shows us development we've seen before, and by getting Bruce caught up in Damian's case, it leaves the Anti-Glow plot completely stagnant, just proving how underutilized this roster of characters really is. The whole point of an adaptation not being particularly comic accurate like this one is to give breathing room for the writers to do something special. Batfam isn't doing that. Episode 8 is all about Bruce accepting that his family can't be perfect and that the imperfections are what make them who they are. There's also an undertone of forgiveness as he learns to accept the reformed villains as better people. This one is much nicer than the previous episode. This gives me a little bit of hope that we might at least end on a high note. This is, however, the only episode so far to stoop to actual juvenile humor. So far, all of the jokes have been fairly clever, or at least good background gags relating to the wider DC universe. But this episode's peak of conflict is King Tut twerking, kicking Batman in the backside. The last two episodes were a joint finale, so hopefully they're about to use this extended runtime to actually do something fun. Episode 9 is when it all comes to a head. Damian figures out that Bruce has been keeping the Anti-Glow from him and is more disappointed than anything. This might be a product of how many times they've tread this plotline, but I don't think they needed to hit it home as much as they have. He runs off and bumps into the mastermind behind everything. I'm going to give you one guess. The Joker. Joker reveals that not only can he use the Anti-Glow to plunge Gotham into the Dark Ages, but he can also use a precise photon stream to mind-wash people by amplifying their anger and turning them crazy. This makes no sense, but it's the Joker, so it doesn't really have to. He uses this new power to amplify Damian's anger with Bruce and mind-wash him into becoming Joker Jr. I love the Joker Jr. trope. I don't think we see it nearly as often as we should, especially the version of events where he specifically turns one of Batman's partners into a Joker-fied version of themselves. I think that they did it so well in Return of the Joker that writers have just been scared to do it too much because they know they'd just be an inferior version. But putting it in this setting, where it's a bit more kid-friendly and we already have precedent from the movie of Joker wanting a family, I think this has strong potential. The first part ends with Joker and JJ revealing they're going to prank all of Gotham one last time before pulling the ultimate prank and destroying everything. Episode 10 works as an amazing finale if you can get past the fact that the final moral is one we've already learnt half a dozen times. Bruce locks the family out of the Batcave and decides he needs to take on the Joker alone for some reason. Of course, he gets caught by the Joker and the rest of the family have to break back into the Batcave to come and find him. This would work great, except Damian knows all of their weaknesses and takes them all out as Joker Jr. All of them. This is going to leave the power scaling community in shambles. It turns out Damian has a strong heart, and he was never actually angry enough with Bruce to get mind controlled in the first place. He's just been playing along to get closer to the Joker and take him out. But what if that hadn't have been the case? This little stack of marshmallows would have just destroyed Gotham as Batman failed to save him. This is where Bruce finally learns to trust Damian. Again, if we get a season 2 of this, and anyone even mutters the word trust, I'm turning it off. Overall, the show gives a strong sense of family. I mean, family. And it highlights some of that dysfunction that a child watching will be used to seeing around them. I like the messaging that they do show, but they retread themselves far too often, and I think the show could have been a lot stronger if they just developed more ideas. You could have cut 4 of these 10 episodes and turned them into something more impactful. This sort of episodic nature is fine if you either commit to it fully, say bugger it to the Anti-Glow stuff, and just have every episode be very simple and aimed at an even younger audience, or if you have a much longer season to weave it in between the serialized ones. I don't dislike Batfam, I think it holds its merits, but it just doesn't hold a candle to Brave and the Bold. I wouldn't even pick it over the first 10 episodes of Brave and the Bold, and that's nostalgia aside, I just think it's less impactful. The intro is a banger though, at least it keeps that trend going. If you liked this video and you'd like to see me put my own childhood Batman show under the same microscope, check out how Batman made me confront my own mortality. Or if you'd like to see more Batfam, check out how I ranked its Christmas movie against every other Batman Christmas story. Except Batman Noel. I don't know how I missed that one.